You see, they think calm is weakness. They think your silence means you're done, like you've been broken, cracked open, and left there to rot. But what they don't get is that calm is a decision. It's the last stage before war. It's the sound before the storm tears through everything. Calm ain't peace. It's patience, marinated in pain. You think I don't know what it means to hold it all in? To be boiling inside while giving them that still look, that poker face that says nothing but means everything. They laugh because they think you're soft now. They think you lost. And that's exactly why you're winning. Calm is the kind of power they never see coming. Because rage is loud, obvious. But calm is cruel. It doesn't scream. It doesn't swing. It watches. It waits. And when it moves, it finishes. Completely. You think you have to respond to every insult. You think you need to explain yourself to people who don't even care to understand. You think your value is tied to how loud you can bark when they poke you. Nah, that's their game. They want the reaction. They want the chaos. They want your attention. Because your calm, your stillness, it's louder than their noise. You ever seen a lion chase flies? Number. But have you seen flies fly around a lion? All the time. You ain't supposed to respond to everything. You ain't supposed to lower yourself just because they got a platform to bark from. What you're supposed to do is become untouchable. And to do that, you stay calm. You level up in silence. You collect their disrespect like fuel. And when it's time, you don't knock. You burn their whole circus down. Let me explain something that this loud world don't teach you anymore. Discipline is power, and calm is the highest form of discipline. You gotta be surgical with your silence, strategic with your stillness. While they scream, you plan. While they post, you build. While they run in circles, chasing validation, you walk a straight line towards something bigger. They gonna think you're gone, irrelevant, forgettable. Let them forget your name. Let them erase you from their minds. And when you rise, when the silence turns into action, oh, they'll remember you. Not the way they did before, not the soft you they laughed at, but the version they can't control, can't provoke, can't shake. The version that don't respond to nonsense but makes moves that can't be ignored. You ever notice something? The ones who always need to be seen, always shouting, always needing to prove something. They're the ones breaking behind closed doors. Because real power doesn't need an audience. Real growth don't need to be broadcasted. And healing is ugly. It's quiet, it's lonely, but it creates something dangerous. A version of you they won't survive. Calm is what builds that. Calm is what shapes a weapon out of a wounded soul. And that soul, yours, it's been through enough. You don't need to bark anymore. Let your silence remind them who you are. Let your growth blind them. Let your distance become the punishment. Because the ones who once thought they could get to you won't even be able to reach you. They're going to test you again and again. They're going to poke, lie, disappear, return, confuse you, manipulate, throw dirt on your name, beg for forgiveness, blame you, cry, smile, stab, hug. And the whole time they'll want one thing from you, a reaction, a sign that they still control your peace. And when you don't give it to them, when you just stay calm, that's when you win. That's when it all flips. Calm isn't weakness. Calm is a crown. And the ones who wear it, they ain't playing the same game anymore. They already won it. Let me tell you something cold. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment you start being respected. The day you stop reacting is the day they start reflecting. And when you stop chasing, they start crumbling. That's the cycle. And it don't change for anyone. But it starts with a choice, a hard one. To be calm when every bone in your body is screaming for revenge. To be silent when your ego wants to roar. To walk away when your pride wants to fight. It's not easy. That's why so few can do it. That's why so few become untouchable. But you're learning, slowly, painfully, quietly, but surely. So stay calm, stay cold, watch everything, say nothing, and when it's time, destroy everything they thought you'd never rebuild. Because the loudest revenge is silence that grows into greatness. The calmest man is always the most dangerous. They'll call you heartless for not reacting. They'll say you've changed because you don't jump when they cry anymore. They'll whisper to others, he doesn't care. But what they won't admit is that your silence terrifies them. You were once predictable, soft, responsive, easy to shake. But now you're unreadable, still, calculated. And that's the scariest version of you they've ever met. Because silence, true, focused silence, shows you're not controlled by emotion anymore. You're not desperate to prove anything. You're done seeking closure, done chasing explanations, done entertaining chaos. And that kind of silence is the beginning of dominance. Because they can't argue with someone who no longer plays the game. They can't manipulate a ghost. They can't break someone who already rebuilt himself out of ashes. You stayed calm, and that calm turned into strategy, into control, into becoming untouchable. And now, they're the ones screaming into the void you left behind. Let me ask you something real. What did reacting ever get you? Think back. When you responded to their disrespect, did they respect you more? When you begged them to stay, did they love you deeper? When you argued to defend yourself, did they finally understand your pain? Number, all it did was prove you were still available, still emotionally reachable, still dependent on their opinion, on their presence, on their validation. You gave them power every time. But calm is different. Calm says, I no longer need you to know my side of the story. Calm says, I've outgrown the chaos you feed on. Calm says, you no longer have access to disturb my peace. And that's where true growth begins. When you stop performing. When you stop explaining. When you stop trying to be seen and just become undeniable. They're going to misinterpret your calmness. They'll think you don't care anymore, that you're cold, that you've become the villain. Let them. Let them paint their version of you in the minds of people who don't even matter. Because the truth? You don't owe anyone your side of the story. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You don't need to defend your decision to walk away, to go silent, to focus on yourself. Calmness is a decision to choose peace over war, with people who never deserved your energy in the first place. And when they see you glowing without them, when they see you moving without reaction, healing without revenge, that's when it hits. That's when they realize. The moment you went calm was the moment they lost all power over you. They will come back. Don't be fooled. They always come back when they realize they can no longer trigger you. They come back not out of love, but out of confusion, fear, or pride. They don't understand your silence, and that scares them. You used to be so expressive, so available, so emotional, and now you're calm, distant, focused, unbothered. It breaks their ego, it shatters their sense of control, because silence is a mirror. It forces them to see themselves. No distractions, no drama, just reflection. And that's the loudest scream you could ever give them. Not in words, not in anger, but in your absence, in your upgrade, in your refusal to be the old version of you they were so comfortable manipulating. Stay calm, even when you're underestimated, even when you're lied about, even when they're laughing at your silence, because eventually they'll stop laughing when they see how your stillness turned into strength, when they see how your disappearance wasn't weakness, it was preparation. See, while they were mocking, you were building. While they were watching, you were working. While they were assuming you were done, you were getting dangerous. The world always underestimates calm men, until calm men return with everything they said he'd never have. That's your power. That's your weapon. That's your revenge. Not noise, not explanations, but results cold, silent, unapologetic. And in that silence, you will discover something sacred. Peace. Not the fake kind people post about. Not the kind you pretend to have while breaking inside. Number, I'm talking about real peace. The kind that doesn't need attention. The kind that don't chase love. The kind that doesn't care who left or who stayed. The kind that says, I've been through hell, and I'm still calm. That kind of peace, it's earned. through suffering, through betrayal, through heartbreak, through silence, and once you taste it, you'll never go back to who you were, because the old you was reactive, loud, needy. The new you, strategic, still, focused, unreachable. So be calm, even when it hurts, even when your hands shake, even when your heart screams. Be calm, because nothing scares this world more than a man who no longer needs it. Be calm, because silence is the armor they can't penetrate. Be calm, because it's the one thing they never expected you to master. And now that you have, you're dangerous in ways they'll never understand. They won't admit it, but they feel your absence more than they ever acknowledged your presence. That's the thing about calm. When you were loud, when you were trying, when you were begging, defending, explaining, they felt powerful. They fed off it. They knew your heart was in it, so they played with it like a toy. But now that you're calm, now that you don't text, don't ask, don't show up, don't argue, they're starving. Starving for the attention they once took for granted. You see, the world don't understand the language of silence, but it listens to it carefully, because silence, it leaves space. And in that space, guilt starts to grow. Regret, doubt. And then the mind starts to race. Did I go too far? Is he really gone? Why isn't he chasing me like before? And those questions, they echo, they linger, they torture, because silence makes them talk to themselves. And sometimes, that's the loudest conversation they've ever had. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to announce you're healing. You don't even need to show them you're better. You just need to be better. Quietly. You want to know how to kill ego? You want to know how to destroy the ones who fed on your suffering. Be calm. Be quiet. Let them think you're dead in the water. Let them believe you fell off, gave up, broke. Let them feel the safety of their illusion. Then, when the time's right, resurface with results, with a life that don't include them, with moves that outgrow their comprehension. And when they finally see what silence built, that's when the regret hits like thunder. That's when their world starts spinning, because the calm one became everything they never thought you could without them. But it's not about revenge, not really. That comes naturally. The real game, it's self-mastery. It's training yourself to not react when you're disrespected, to not explain when you're misunderstood, to not engage when you're provoked. That's the war most people lose, the war with themselves. Anyone can clap back. Anyone can scream, throw words, throw fists, type essays trying to be heard. But not everyone can control themselves. Not everyone can sit in the fire and say nothing. That's power. That's control. That's royalty. The ones who can't be triggered, they're the ones who control the board. And when you reach that level, you stop trying to be loved. You stop trying to be liked. You stop needing them to get it. You just move in silence and let the dust behind you do the talking. Calm is not numbness. Calm is not indifference. Calm is not weakness. Calm is choosing your battles. It's understanding your energy is currency, and not everyone is rich enough to afford it. Calm is looking at betrayal, disrespect, and manipulation, and walking away. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to understand that feeding it only weakens you. You got things to build. You got healing to do. You got levels to reach that these clowns can't even pronounce. So you stay calm, not for them, for you. Because chaos burns time. But calm builds empires. Calm attracts clarity. Calm lets you see who's real and who's loud. And once you get that clarity, you'll never let noise blind you again. They'll call you cold for not reacting. They'll say you've changed because you stopped playing your old role. Good, let them. Because they never respected your warmth, so now they'll learn to fear your silence. They'll throw bait, try to guilt you, try to bring up the past, try to make you doubt your stillness. But don't break. You worked too hard to master this silence. You bled to get this calm. You suffered to earn this peace. Don't throw it away for a few words or a few tears. Calm doesn't mean emotionless. It means emotion in check. It means choosing strength over satisfaction. And that strength, it multiplies. Every time you hold back, every time you observe instead of react, every time you stay focused while they spiral, you win quietly, completely. So when they ask what happened to you, when they say you used to care, or you're not the same anymore, smile, because they're right. You're not. You've evolved. You've shed your old skin, the one that begged, reacted, cried for people who were never worth the tears. Now you move differently. Now you respond with nothing but distance. Now you let your absence speak. And that version of you, that calm, steady, silent storm, that's the one they never expected. That's the one they'll never be able to handle. You know what's funny? They thought silence meant you were done for. They thought you were out of the game. See, they only understand noise, drama, arguments, shouting, explanations. That's how they measure someone's value. But you disappeared into the dark and rebuilt yourself. Quietly, ruthlessly. And that kind of comeback, it's not just painful, it's unforgettable. Because while they were watching other people, chasing empty validation, playing with egos and masks, you were becoming something they'll never reach again. You stopped calling, stopped caring, stopped showing up to places where you were never truly seen. And that decision to pull back, to grow in silence, to stay calm when everything inside you wanted revenge, that's the turning point. That's when you became dangerous. Because they didn't just lose your attention, they lost access to a version of you that will never exist again. Let them talk. Let them say you switched up, got cold, turned distant. That's how people describe the version of you they can no longer manipulate. They want you soft. They want you reacting, because that's when you're easy to read, easy to use. But when you go calm, when you stop trying to explain yourself, when you stop trying to prove you're the better person, now they don't know what to do with you. They fumble, they second guess, they spin stories to make sense of your calmness because they can't control it. And the truth is, they never could. They just fooled themselves into thinking your emotions meant they had power. But all you were doing was feeling too much for people who deserved nothing. All you were doing was giving a loud world the last pieces of your energy. And now you know better. Staying calm doesn't mean you didn't break. It doesn't mean you weren't angry. It means you used that pain like a weapon, not to attack, but to rise. They say the calm ones are boring. That's fine. Let them think that. Because the truth is, calm people see everything. They study the room, the energy, the shifts, the fakeness. They say nothing, but they notice everything. And that awareness, that observation, it becomes armor. It becomes strategy. You ever seen a lion respond to a mosquito? Number, it's not worth the energy. And that's you now. Not every insult deserves a comeback. Not every betrayal deserves confrontation. Sometimes the greatest punishment is simply not being accessible anymore. Sometimes the best revenge is letting them watch you win from the seats they chose when they walked away from you. And yeah, maybe part of you misses the noise, misses the chaos, the constant communication, the drama that felt like attention. That's normal. That's addiction talking. You were addicted to proving your worth to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. But now you know the truth. Peace is not loud. Love is not confusing. Loyalty is not a question mark. And silence is sacred. You earned it through disappointment, through pain, through being underestimated time and time again. You earned the right to not engage. You earned the right to outgrow anyone who only wanted access to your energy when it was convenient for them. So don't look back. Don't explain. Don't entertain. Let them sit with the version of you they created. The version that no longer picks up, no longer responds, no longer bleeds. They'll romanticize the past. Remember when we used to talk every day? Yeah, you remember. And you remember how drained you felt, how invisible you were, how they only cared when it suited them. You remember being the only one holding the connection together. And now they want nostalgia to fix what they broke. But nostalgia don't erase disrespect. Memory don't erase manipulation. And love, real love, doesn't come with confusion. Calm taught you that. Calm showed you who's real when you stop talking, when you stop giving, when you stop showing up. And most of them, they disappeared right after. That's how you know it was never love. It was access. It was convenience. It was comfort. And now that the access is revoked, now that you're calm, private, unavailable, they panic. But it's too late. You don't need closure. You don't need revenge. You don't need them to admit they were wrong. The silence already said it all. And you've become someone far beyond their reach. Not because you're arrogant, not because you're bitter, but because you finally understood your value. And when a person understands their value, they go quiet. They stop proving it. They start living it calmly, powerfully, unapologetically. You ever wonder why they poke at you when you go silent? Why they suddenly reach out after weeks of absence just to say something meaningless, hoping to trigger a response? It's not because they care. It's because your calm exposes something in them. They can't handle the emptiness you leave behind. See, silence is a mirror. It forces people to hear their own noise. It forces them to face what they did when no one was watching. You walking away didn't hurt them right away. Number the silence did. The time you didn't call, the message you didn't send, the reaction you didn't give. That stillness, it started to echo. And each echo whispered what they tried to bury. You were the real one. You were solid, present, consistent. And they mistook your presence for permanence. But you walking away, that's when the silence got loud. That's when they started to feel it in their chest. They'll reach out eventually, trying to test the temperature. A meme, how are you? A memory you once shared. It won't be love. It'll be curiosity. Can they still shake you? Can they still walk back into your calm world like they never wrecked it? But don't fall for it, because silence changed you. You no longer bleed for people who enjoy watching you suffer. You no longer explain your worth to those who measured it with how much chaos you could tolerate. And the best part? You're not even angry anymore. You're focused, cold, yes, distant, sure, but peaceful. The kind of peace that doesn't get pulled into the same old cycles. The kind of peace that sees the trap before it's set. The kind of calm that simply says, I'm not coming back. And what they'll never admit is that your calm shook their world more than your loudest breakdown ever did. They were ready for tears, ready for rage, ready for a reaction, but they weren't ready for nothing. They weren't ready for you to simply not care anymore. That's the kind of punishment no apology can erase, because people can handle anger. They can dismiss pain, but detachment, indifference, that's when it finally hits them. That's when they realize they were never in control. They only had what you allowed. And now that you've taken it back, your time, your mind, your peace, they're left with the silence they created, the silence they deserve. There's something lethal about a person who chooses calm over chaos, because that's not someone who's given up. That's someone who's leveled up. You don't need to yell to be heard anymore. You don't need to argue to prove a point. You don't need to defend your name in rooms you've outgrown. That version of you is buried, gone. In its place stands someone who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't flinch. Someone who walks away with dignity, even when it hurts. Because now you know, not everyone deserves access to your presence. Not everyone is worthy of the man you've become. And the more you protect that peace, the more chaos gets filtered out. Naturally, without a fight, without a sound. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to destroy them. Life will, regret will, time will. You just have to stay calm and let the consequences unfold. While they scramble to replace what they never appreciated, you build, you focus, you rise. And when they finally see what your silence created, it won't be a version of you they can approach. It'll be one they fear, respect, and forever regret losing. That's the real win. That's the real revenge. Not anger, not payback, but evolution, growth, silence. Because nothing haunts the careless more than the calm man who refused to break. It's wild, isn't it? How the same people who used to drain your soul now wonder why you're not picking up anymore. The same ones who made you question your worth now act surprised when they feel your absence like a weight. But this is what happens when a man gets tired of noise. When he gets tired of being misunderstood, disrespected, played with. He doesn't explode. He doesn't scream or plead. He just shuts down. Not out of weakness, but out of understanding. A deep, quiet, lethal understanding that peace is more valuable than presence. That silence speaks louder than explanations. That calm is not defeat, it's evolution. Because the loud version of you, the emotional version, that was survival. But the calm version, that's power. And once you tap into that, once you feel that inner silence where no one can touch you anymore, you never go back. You start to realize something dangerous. Not everyone deserves closure. Not everyone deserves to hear how bad they hurt you. Some people deserve silence as their final conversation. Let them wrestle with the ghost of who you used to be. Let them wonder why you stopped showing up, why you stopped answering, why you stopped caring. Don't give them the satisfaction of knowing they broke you. Instead, let your calm be the story. Let your distance be the explanation. Because silence doesn't beg. Silence doesn't chase. Silence doesn't need to prove anything. It just is. And the ones who used to feed off your attention, they starve in your absence. They suffocate in the void. And the more calm you stay, the louder that silence becomes in their head. Every day, every minute, every memory they took for granted, now it rings like a bell they can't unhear. People love to preach about how strong they are until you stop reacting. Then suddenly, your silence becomes a threat. They say, "He's changed," when you stop tolerating the disrespect. They say, You don't love me anymore. When you finally love yourself enough to walk away. But you didn't change. You evolved. You grew out of chaos. You matured out of emotional slavery. You got tired of dancing in a burning room just to make someone else feel warm. And now that you've stepped into your calmness, you're untouchable. That's what they don't get. The calmest man in the room is always the most dangerous, because he sees everything, hears everything, remembers everything, and yet he speaks nothing. That's silence, that's strategy, that's patience. That's a bomb waiting for the right time to level the whole damn game. You don't owe them a single word, not a text, not a goodbye, not an explanation. Because if they really cared, they would have listened when you were loud. They would have changed when you were patient. They would have stayed when you were breaking. But they didn't. They kept taking. And now they deal with the aftermath. Now they sit with the empty space where you used to be. And maybe, just maybe, that space teaches them something. Teaches them that a calm man isn't a broken one. He's a man who chose himself. Finally. Fully. And in a world that thrives on noise, on reaction, on emotional manipulation, that makes you rare. That makes you powerful. That makes you unforgettable. So stay calm, stay focused, stay unbothered. The ones who mocked your silence will one day wish they had something, anything, left to say to you. But by then, it'll be too late. You'll be too far gone, too elevated, too healed. And all they'll have left is the silence. The silence that once annoyed them. The silence they laughed at. The silence that now screams louder than anything they've ever heard. Let that silence echo through everything you do. Let it be the soundtrack to your comeback. Let it be the roar they never saw coming. Because real strength isn't how loud you can scream. Real strength is how calm you can stay when the whole world tries to shake. And one day, maybe not now, maybe not even soon, but one day, they'll sit alone in a room full of noise and feel the silence you left behind pressing on their chest like a weight they can't shake off. Because silence doesn't end when the conversation ends. Silence follows people. It lingers. It settles into corners of the mind, showing up at 2 a.m. in the form of memories, missed opportunities, and guilt dressed as questions. What if I didn't push him away? What if I actually listened when he warned me? Why did he go so quiet, so fast? See, that's the trap they walked into. They thought calm was weakness. They mistook your silence for surrender. But what they didn't realize was that your silence was the closing of a door they'll never reopen. Calm wasn't the end of your emotion. It was the end of your tolerance. And when a man reaches that point, that's when he becomes untouchable. because he's no longer reacting out of pain. He's building from it, quietly, strategically, permanently. You know what you used to be? Too available, too soft, for people who sharpened their words on your kindness. You explained when they weren't even listening. You forgave before the apology. You waited when they were walking away. But not anymore, because now you've seen what calmness brings. You've seen how stepping back brings clarity, how distance reveals true intention, how silence shows you who was only loud when they had an audience. And now that you're calm, you don't just hear better, you see clearer. You see the fake love, the convenience, the manipulation masked as affection. And with each silent breath you take, you let it all fall away. The lies, the pressure, the weight of trying to be understood in a world that was never built for someone like you. They'll never say it out loud, but your calm made them uncomfortable, because chaos was their comfort zone. They knew how to handle arguments, shouting, blame. That's the language they spoke. But silence, detachment, that hit differently. That's when they realized you weren't just angry. You were done. Done trying. Done hoping. Done repeating yourself to people committed to pretending they didn't hear you. And now that your voice is gone, now that your presence is gone, now that your energy is theirs no longer, now they finally understand. Not because you explained, not because you returned, but because the silence left them alone with themselves. And people like that, they hate themselves more than they ever hated you. They just used your love to distract from their own emptiness. Now that your calmness took that away, they have to face the mirror. And that's a war they'll lose without you there to take the hits. So if you're ever tempted to respond, don't. If you're ever tempted to go back and explain one more time, don't. Because the version of you that once needed them to understand, he's gone. And in his place is a man who doesn't care if they ever get it. You've learned that some things are better left unsaid, that some people need to experience the silence of your absence more than the sound of your voice. And that's not cold. That's justice. Because your peace is sacred now. Your calm is earned. And nobody gets to disturb it unless they've proven themselves worthy of being in the same room as it. Most won't. Most never were. Let them sit outside the gates they burned down with their own hands. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them regret. You keep building. Keep walking. Keep rising. Silently, steadily, unshakably. Because when you mastered calm, you became something this world fears, but can't destroy. A man who no longer responds, but still controls everything. And there will come a moment, maybe when you're sitting in silence with the windows cracked open and the world finally feels distant, when it hits you, the peace, the real kind, not the kind you fake to get through the day, Not the kind you post about online to convince yourself you're okay, but the kind that fills your chest and wraps around your bones like armor. The kind that makes you realize how far you've come from the version of yourself that used to tremble when they didn't reply, panic when they pulled away, chase when they grew distant. That man, that boy, he's gone, buried under the weight of all the pain he endured without ever showing the world how bad it hurt. And what rose in his place is calm, cold, focused. A man who doesn't just survive betrayal, he turns it into fuel. Who doesn't respond to noise, he drowns it in silence. And that realization, that stillness, that control, that's when you understand you've won. Because they didn't expect you to become this version. They thought the heartbreak would break you. They thought the lies would destroy you. They thought you'd stay on the floor forever, begging for answers that never came. But instead you went quiet. You went dark. You disappeared into yourself and did what they never could. You healed. Not the pretty kind. Not the Instagram quotes and yoga sessions. Number, you healed in the trenches. You sat with your pain. You dissected your past. You stared down your guilt and shame and said, I'm not running anymore. And in doing that, you became something different, something unrecognizable to those who only knew how to love you when you were broken. Let them wonder. Let them replay it all in their heads. Every conversation, every message left on read, every cold silence you gave them when they came crawling back. Because that's the real closure, not the one you speak, the one they feel when they realize your silence isn't temporary, when they realize the door isn't locked. It's gone. There is no way back in, no reset button, no dramatic apology scene that gets them a second chance. They burned the bridge, and you let the fire turn into ash. Then you built elsewhere, quietly. And now they stand on the edge of what used to be yours, realizing they'll never find it again, because you no longer give away your peace to people who treat it like a playground. You're not bitter. That's what they'll say, of course, that you're cold, closed off, heartless, but they'll be wrong. You're not bitter. You're better. You're careful. You're guarded. You're aware now. You know the cost of giving too much to those who give too little. You've counted every scar. You've buried every apology that came too late. You've walked through fire and came out with skin too thick to be pierced by their weak words anymore. So don't explain your calm to anyone who never respected your chaos. Don't justify your silence to those who mocked your pain. You owe them nothing. Let your life speak. Let your glow be the language they can't unlearn. Because eventually even the loudest ones realize the silence they once laughed at is the very thing that ended them. And maybe the world still spins loud. Maybe people still try to pull you back into the noise. But you found something they don't even know exists. Power in stillness. A throne built from patience, a crown carved from self-control. You're no longer trying to be understood. You've outgrown the need for validation. You've realized that being calm doesn't mean you're numb. It means you've mastered your storm. It means you've taken every ounce of chaos they threw at you and turned it into precision. And that kind of energy, that can't be faked. That can't be bought. That kind of calm is rare and terrifying. Because the most dangerous man alive is not the one who shouts. It's the one who listens, waits, and moves when the time is right. You don't even recognize the old you anymore. The one who used to beg for clarity. The one who stayed up at night overthinking every silence, replaying every word like a broken record, hoping maybe this time the ending would change. That version of you, he was good, honest, full of love, but he didn't know how to protect himself. He gave too much, too fast, too freely. He mistook potential for loyalty, gestures for intention, and attention for love. And every time he got burned, he just poured more of himself into the fire, hoping it would eventually warm the ones who only ever came close to feel his flame, never to keep it alive. But now, you know better. Now, you carry your warmth like a weapon, not something to be handed out, but something to be earned. And if they can't match your peace, they don't get to touch it. Calm taught you how to stop over-explaining, because people hear what they want, not what you say. They twist your honesty into weakness, your love into leverage. But silence doesn't bend. Silence doesn't leave room for negotiation. When you go calm, you stop inviting people to misunderstand you. You stop handing over the blueprint to your heart to those who only want to break it for sport. Now, you've learned to sit with your silence like an old friend, not awkward, not uncomfortable, just real, quiet, certain. And it's in that stillness where your power multiplies, because the world can't figure you out anymore. You used to be predictable, emotional, open, available. Now, you're unreadable. That calm face they once laughed at now haunts their memories. That steady silence, it's louder than any argument you ever had. And it lingers, long after you're gone. You've grown to love the quiet, not because it's peaceful all the time, but because it's honest. The silence doesn't lie to you. It doesn't gaslight you. It doesn't feed you breadcrumbs just to watch you starve. In the quiet, you learned who you were, not who they said you were, not the version you had to become to be loved, but you, the version that stands tall without approval, the version that doesn't shrink just to make others feel taller. The version that walks into rooms without needing to be seen, because his presence already changes the temperature. That's the kind of man you are now. You move with intention. You speak when it matters. You choose your energy like a king chooses his army. with purpose. And if that makes you too cold for some people, let them freeze. You're not here to warm hands that only held you when it was convenient. Because calm isn't just an attitude. It's a transformation. It's the result of choosing peace after being drowned in war. It's the reward for choosing silence when you had every reason to scream. It's the evolution of a man who learned the hardest way that not everyone who claps for you wants you to rise. And now that you know that, you don't hate them. You just don't see them anymore. You stopped making space for people who only knew how to take. You stopped keeping doors open for those who walked out without looking back. Your calmness didn't just create distance. It created standards. It built walls. It raised the price of access. And the ones who once had it for free, now they can't even find the gate. So let them talk. Let them assume. Let them wonder why you're so quiet now. They don't need to know that your silence is built on scars, that your calm is stitched together with the threads of every night you spent doubting your own worth. They don't need to understand that this version of you, the one who doesn't chase, doesn't argue, doesn't flinch, he was born in fire, created in pain, sharpened by solitude. And he's not going anywhere because you're not going back, not to the noise, not to the begging, not to the self-betrayal. You've buried that version of yourself with honor. And from that grave rose someone unstoppable. Someone silent, yes, but never weak again.